Conversations with Iris. Here's your host, my loving wife, Iris.
Hola, mi gente bonita. Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to Conversations with Iris, where real talk means healing, truth, and of course, that little thing we call heart. Because over here, we just don't talk about things, we feel through every word. Every story matters, and you know what? Every story deserves to be heard. Amen to that. So, now, before we dive in, you already know. I got to show a big old hug and some love to my podcast family over at the Short Desk Podcast. Definitely tune in, listen to my brothers and wonderful hubby who are keeping it real on that mic, keep it hot and with purpose and passion. So make sure you definitely tune in and listen in to them. And while you're at it, don't forget to show me some love to your girl right here. Conversations with Iris. Come on now, guys. I'm streaming on all platforms. So, yes, download, listen, subscribe, listen, and share. I mean, I was just talking to one of my friends today and I was like, listen, girl, while you're doing your cleaning, driving, or you just need to get a peace of mind, just pop in that episode and download it and just listen to me. All the moments and love is definitely appreciated. And also, if one of my episodes made you cry, reflect, or just shout in your mind, yes, yes, go ahead and stop and drop some anonymous fan mail. It's fast, it's easy, and trust me, it fuels this podcast and just makes it keep going and running. So all the good love is definitely appreciated. And of course, I definitely want to take a quick moment and thank our big listeners out there, our beautiful listeners tuning in from all corners of the map and streaming on every platform. Starting off strong, I want to give a quick shout out to East Hanover, New Jersey, Jacksonville, Florida. Y'all are just a short drive away from me, so I feel that love. So thank you guys. We also have Wanaki, Wisconsin. And let me tell you, I used to have a friend who swore that Wisconsin was actually pronounced Wisconsinsia. So we're still working on that geographic pronunciation there, but bless her heart. But thank you so much for showing up with your Midwest vibes. And last but not least, I have to also give a shout out to my Caribbean cousins, my next door neighbors, not too far from PR. I'm talking about Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic. Thank you guys so much. I'm proud to shout you guys out. Thank you for the Latino love. Te quiero mucho, Santo Domingo. Thank you so much. I wanted to let you guys know that today's episode just lifts the lid on the topic that touches more lives than we often realize. Our guest is doing profound, life changing work rooted on purpose, faith, and of course, healing. He is the founder of Hope for ADP. That's Hope for Adults and Divorced Parents, and a powerful voice for the often silent pain many adults and children unfortunately carry. As a counselor, author, speaker, and someone truly walking on divine calling, he's been educating, encouraging, and empowering others through seminar, books, and radio just worldwide. His work centers on healing and relationships with ourselves, with others, and with God, which is so important. And what is more even powerful about this gentleman is that this mission is deeply personal from his healing journey and his heart to help others find freedom too. Without further ado, please help me welcome Bienvenidos Kent Darcie. How are you?
Great, Iris. It is really, that was a wonderful intro, and I really appreciate it. It's great to be here.
I am so glad that you like that. And before we dive into today's episode and just conversation, and I have to ask you if your energy today could be described as a weather forecast or a song or title, what would that be and why?
If it could be a weather thing, it would be partly cloudy, dash of sunshine,
Oh,
but yeah, partly cloudy. I did some counseling today, and
oh,
because I'm a
good.
licensed professional counselor as well, and one session was a little bit difficult. So I would say it was sunny, but yeah, a little bit of clouds in there.
Oh, I love that. And thank you for sharing that because that already kind of gives us a little glimpse into your spirit and, of course, your personality.
Hmm.
And I definitely like to take a step back to help our listeners really understand your journey, the journey behind your wonderful mission. Can you walk us through your background a bit and what ultimately led you to start Hope for ADP? I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
Yeah, actually, it's Adult with Divorced Parents Ministries, and hopeforadp.com is the website. Basically, I lived a white picket fence life, and mom, dad, two younger sisters, and my parents got divorced when I was 13.
Oh wow.
And I know a number of our listeners didn't have, necessarily fantastic relationships with their father, but I had a fantastic relationship with my father. My father could leap tall buildings in a single bound, stop bullets. I mean, he was just Superman in every way, in my eyes. And I went from seeing him every day to seeing him 3 or 4 times a year because he moved away. So it was very, very tough for a 13-year-old boy. My mom did an amazing job. She didn't want the divorce, and she, raising myself and two younger sisters. But if you had asked me then, hey, is the divorce a hassle or anything? I say, yeah, no big deal. It's not affecting me. The holidays are kind of a hassle. I miss my dad, but not a big deal. Well, fast forward
Yeah.
20, 30 years, I'm now married. I've got 3 kids. And other than the anger that I had in my childhood after the divorce, I found that I still had anger as an adult. But of course, that was not me. That was, the world and my wife and my job and everything. But what I learned at a marriage retreat was God said, Kent, if you don't get your act together, you are on the same emotional path as your dad. And my
Mm.
father was an adult child of divorce, from an adult child of divorce, from an adult child of divorce, which is pretty common. And that just scared the bejeebers out of me because I love my wife. We just celebrated 41 years last year.
Oh,
And
amen.
now God's saying, if I don't do something intentional to change, things are not that great. And so I'm basically a researcher at heart. I did a lot of research, interviewed authors and psychologists, and read a ton and did tons of research. And I was serving on a board at the church at the time and said, we got to let people know about this. And they said, well, go for it. So 20 years ago, I did my first all-day seminar, basically to let people, hear what I had learned.
Yeah.
And that was my journey. That was the beginning of my journey on healing. First, identifying how my parents' divorce had actually impacted me, which because I would have been in denial and was totally in denial, and then enabling myself. There's a wonderful scripture that is the key scripture for our ministry, and it says, "All praise to God, the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. God is our merciful Father and the source of all comfort. He comforts us in all our troubles so that we can comfort others. And when they are troubled, we will be able to give them the same comfort God has given us." And basically, God has given me comfort, so I share, so other people can receive comfort and they can share, and this cycle of divorce can be broken. That's my passion.
Wow. Oh my goodness. And thank you so much for sharing that. And at age 13, you were basically firsthand experienced
Oh yeah,
divorce.
yeah.
And tell me a little bit about that. Was it a shared custody, divided holidays? And how was that for you? That you said later on you didn't realize that you basically felt impacted by it, but how was that when it happened?
Well, it was a lot different back then. I'm on the older end of the spectrum at this point, and back then, like today, if kids go through divorce, there's all sorts of, the guidance counselors help know about it, the youth pastors help. There's all sorts of books, there's all sorts of stuff that can help. Back then, even though I'm on the front, it was 73, so I was on the peak end of the divorce wave, really, toward the end.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing. I didn't even know anybody else that had divorced parents back then. So, and as I had shared, my dad was my everything. I mean, he just could do no wrong. And when he was gone, it left me with my mom and two women, two
Mm-hmm.
sisters, and I was lonely and very angry because I blame my mom. And when we get older, we see things through a different lens. We get kind of a bigger picture. But back then, when you have a perfect dad, if you will.
Yeah.
I was angry and dragged that anger right through, high school, and basically another thing I dealt with, in retrospect, was fear. And we'll cover some of the issues that impact adults with divorced parents in a moment, but the anger was huge, and you feel alone, like nobody
Mhm.
got it. And a lot of people feel that way today, even though, you hear, well, half of all the divorces, all the marriages are ending up in divorce, which is really not true. The number's lower, but it's still like a snowflake. When it
Mm.
happens, it's you. And there's, particularly back then, there was no, support. There was no anything. You were just kind of wandering through this. And, in my situation, my dad was married for almost 25 years, and then almost 25 years, and then almost 25 years. So there was overlap between my two stepmoms and my mom,
Wow.
which made things interesting because my mom was not a huge fan of my dad, who, of course, I loved. And
Yeah.
she certainly wasn't a huge fan of my stepmoms. So it made life pretty challenging.
Oh my goodness. And I want to definitely touch base on something you had mentioned. Impact. The impact a lot of us maybe realize later down in life, right? You indicated that you were impacted, you realized many years later. You thought you had the perfect
Mhm.
dad and all that good stuff. And how does that look like for an adult now? You went through this divorce, you witnessed it firsthand, and now as an adult, you're like, oh my God, this has really impacted me and really affected my relationship now with my wife and my children. And a lot of us don't even realize how your childhood
Mhm.
or those experiences impact us. Just unpack that a little bit so our listeners could really understand the impactfulness of that.
Sure. Real simple. Denial.
Mm-hmm.
I was in absolute 100% denial, that there was any impact. And it wasn't until I really dived into it. And that's why I found a book called The Unexpected Legacy of Divorce, which opened my eyes. It was radical at the time because the prevailing view was it's not a big deal. It's a bump in the road, doesn't really affect the kids. And Judith Wallerstein came on the scene with this book that just threw that on its ear and said, no, wait a minute. There's all sorts of impacts that are affecting these kids. And I learned that not only was my parents' divorce impacting me, but that there was millions of me out there.
Yeah.
And we just you don't know that. And so once I started the process of learning how it did it my, what are the issues that impact adults with divorced parents, then I started going, yep, that's me, that's me, that's me, that's me. And then once you identify what the issues are, you can address them. You can deal with, various healing, skills and coping mechanisms, and, prayer, and working on ways to address the issues. But for the most part, the vast majority of people I run across are like me. We're in denial. The world
Mm-hmm.
says it's not a big deal. It's just a bump in the road. And when it's not for us, we just feel like we're an oddball, when in reality, we're normal.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. And what sparked your journey into healing and eventually just start Hope for ADP? When did that come to fruition?
That really, when I did I was actually mad at first. When I learned how my parents' divorce was impacting me. And
Mhm.
one thing I want to say, and I should have said it before now, this is really important. My ministry, Adult Children of Divorce Ministries, we're not about blaming parents. We're not blaming it about, bashing divorced people. The Bible says honor your father and your mother. And if anything, I think I had more love for my parents and a better relationship after I'd
Yeah.
worked through this stuff. So if you're listening and you're divorced, or people who are divorced, relax. That's not what I'm about at all. Basically my position is the divorce happened. What's the possible impact on the kids when they grew up? And how do we deal with that impact? And once I learned about anger, that anger is the number one issue for adults with divorced parents, unresolved anger. You have anger because of loss. You have anger because of what I call the loyalty challenge. Which one of us do you love the most? You have fears, fear of abandonment, fear of conflict, fear of doom. That was a really interesting one for me because I didn't go off the rails. I didn't, drink and do drugs and all that sort of stuff that all the stats show, many adult children divorced go through, money when they're younger go through. I didn't have any of that. And in the book, it talked about the perfect case. And this was somebody that was like me, didn't really go through all that sort of stuff. But one of the big things that struck me was the fear of doom. And basically, the fear of doom is waiting for the rug to be pulled out from you at any minute. You know, th-
Mm,
Things are good now, but they're
yeah.
going to crash and burn. And a lot of that is because, for the most part, and again, there's kind of two things of divorce we want to look at. There's divorce high school and under, and then there's divorce as adults when the parent. That's called gray divorce, and that's a whole different thing. But basically, you go through life waiting for the other shoe to drop, and as a result, we don't enjoy life. We tend to become control freaks, and we just. I like to say that in the Bible, it says that Jesus came to give us abundant life. That's
Mm-hmm.
0 to 10 life. 0 is ugh, and and 10 is waha. We tend to live between 4 and 7 because you're not going to get too
Mm.
high because you're only going to be disappointed anyway. That's the fear of doom. And you're not going to go too low because you feel like you're going to just lose it. But one of the things that's really interesting with the fear of doom is that if you're from an intact family and marriage is going good, kids are behaving, the job's good, life is everything's going great, your anxiety level goes down. If you have divorced parents and marriage is going good and the kids are okay and new job's going good and your anxiety goes up
Mm.
because your brain says all this could end at any minute. So your anxiety level goes up because you're in fear of losing it. And everything I'm talking about is kind of under the radar. We're not really aware of it, but it's altered our programming. And that's how we're looking at fear of abandonment, conflict, doom. We have a fear of inadequacy, fear of marriage, which is rampant right now, the fear of marriage. That's why a lot of people just bypass it and they live together.
Mm. Thank you
Is it-
so much for that. I'm sorry to cut you off. Go
No
ahead. I
problem.
had cut you off. Sorry.
No problem. There's trust issues. We really make people trust us. That
Mm.
we really make them earn our trust. We just don't trust. And then there's father hunger. Father hunger is interesting because father hunger is just missing dad, if you will. But the problem with that is anger affects men and women, but it comes out more destructively with men. Father hunger affects men and women, but it comes out more destructively with women. For the guys, there's an innate question that says, do I measure up as a guy? Do I measure up as a man? That's the question that's in guys' hearts. For the ladies' hearts, there's two questions. Am I beautiful? And am I special? And when I say beautiful, I don't mean like supermodel beauty. I mean beautiful in the eyes of my dad,
Mm.
special in the eyes of my dad. And the problem is if they don't get that answer from a healthy source, they're going to get the answer. And very often there's guys out there say, oh yeah, you're special, you're beautiful, but if there's strings. And it's unfortunate because we don't realize that programming is there. But with venues like this, we're able to say, hey, this is what's going on and something that you want to check out.
Wow. And so, and that's good to know. And I love how you honed in on the anger, the
Mm-hmm.
unresolved. You talk about denial and all that stuff, fear. That all definitely drives in. And I'm gonna be honest with you. I grew up with a loving parent household. My
Mm-hmm.
parents never divorced or anything like that. So I feel like I'm cheating here compared to somebody like my husband who actually grew up with uh, a parent that was divorced,
Mm-hmm.
I guess one of the things that I really want to understand is like when you sit down with someone that just is starting to realize the effects of their parents' divorce. Let's
Mm-hmm.
take that back. Even years later,
Yeah.
they're in denial.
Yeah.
You talk about what they're feeling, but what does those emotions and patterns you've noticed? Like, what are they that they could call out?
Well, one of the things that's kind of interesting is that um, fear is a very strong emotion. And it's kind of tricky when it's under the radar. Because if you look at what contributes to anger, very often fear is in the mix. feeling inadequate, fear, trauma. Those all things contribute to anger. And one of the feelings that I see the most is aloneness. As
Oh.
I'd mentioned, they I'll talk with somebody and
Mhm.
they'll say, "Yeah, man, my parents are doing this, and and they love their parents, but it's just crazy when you've got one this way and one that way and everything, and they're going,
Yeah.
man, and I have to do this and I have to do that, and I feel like I'm going nuts." And I go, "Well, that's normal." And they look at me
Mm.
and they go, "Really?" I said, "Yeah. In our world, that's normal because we feel that we're an island and that we're the only people going through this stuff." That's why I love doing these programs or when I do a workshop or training or whatever, because people will be going, "That's me. That's me.
Mm.
That's me." In fact, let me real quick, on the back of my
Sure.
book, I have questions that when I'm at a conference or whatever, and somebody will come up to the booth and they'll say, what's it? And I'll flip the book over and I'll have them read the questions. And the first one is, do you have trouble trusting people? Are you
Mm.
secretly fearful that whatever situation or relationship you're in will suddenly fall apart? Do you dread or hate Thanksgiving and Christmas? Do loved ones or friends say you have a problem with anger? Do you often feel worthless or inadequate? Is the real reason you decided to live together because you're afraid you can't do the marriage thing successfully? And when they're looking
Wow.
at that, you'll start to see that nod. Oh, yeah. Ooh, yes. Yeah. They don't even make it through the whole list. And that's our world, but nobody's talking about it. So we feel alone. We feel weird. We feel abnormal. And yet in reality, our world is it's crazy. You're
It
dealing
is.
with parents and ex-parents. Well, you never have ex-parents, but step-parents and ex-step-parents and step-siblings and all these dynamics. And one of the things that changes in this is that, like in your world, when you were growing up, it's
Mhm.
very child-centric. And I don't mean in a bad sense. I mean, just, but it's your schedule, your needs. You've got whatever at school. You've got your clothes or whatever you need. It's very child centric. If you played sports, it revolved around your schedule. When the divorce happens, it becomes very parent centric
Mm.
because you've got two schedules, two issues, two whatever, and you've got people. And one of the reasons I don't bash divorced parents is because, first of all, it's unbiblical. But second of all, doing this for over 20 years, one of the things you realize is how emotionally traumatizing divorce is to the parents.
Oh my
It
god.
is no cakewalk. It is
No.
second only to the death of a parent as far as emotional trauma levels. And many will say it's worse because if a 45-year-old spouse dies, that's a tragedy.
Mm.
But it's involuntary. When a 45-year-old spouse leaves, it's a choice. So you have rejection and all that with the parents, but you also have they're always there. They don't go away. And so you're constantly being triggered, and then new people come on the thing, and then maybe your parents don't get along. And the next book I'm writing is called roughly it's called I Do saying preparing to say I do when parents said I don't. The premarital guide for adults with divorced parents. And basically, it's a marriage guide and a remarriage guide. Because when I do a workshop, half my audience is divorced already, and they don't know
Oh
why.
wow.
Because what
Wow.
you see is that the issues that I described that we struggle with are the very issues. If you go to a marriage conference, they say those are what you want in a marriage.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
we undermine relationships. We have no model for relationships. And as a result, our relationships struggle. And when you put anger on top of that, it's not a great recipe.
Oh my goodness. And I'm glad that you brought that up because I do feel that if you're entering a marriage with somebody that experienced divorce at a child age, I think they're deemed to be counseling for that as well. You hear premarital counseling, like I had it with my pastor. It was very enlightening, but I kind of have to agree with what you're saying because you will need that other piece of the counseling puzzle when you grow up with a divorced parent because it might help you mitigate a lot of those errors in your own marriage. I mean, you got to think about all those things. And I don't think a lot of our people in our society are thinking about that for sure.
Well, we don't teach it. It's not a big
Yeah.
deal. It's a drop in the bucket. It's whatever. Although the spouses normally see it. It's kind of fascinating. If I do a precursor, like in a church or something, just a little blurb, you'll see them elbowing their spouse, going, "That's you, that's you, that's you," and my wife did that for years. She made the
Mm.
connection way before I did. So, but I want to touch real briefly on another part of divorce that's also affecting many of our audience, and I'll blitz through it really quickly. And that's
Yes.
gray divorce. And that is when parents wait until we're grown to divorce, because in a lot of ways, it's worse. The parents think it's better. And again, there's no malice, there's no malintent. They honestly believe that because the kids are grown, it won't be as big a deal. But
Mm.
there's a number of issues that affect those impacted by gray divorce. The first thing is there's no support. Right now, unlike when I was a kid and got a divorce, today, like I said, the guidance counselors are aware of it, the youth pastors are aware of it. Everybody knows that divorce affects kids. So there's, divorce care for kids. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff out there. But if you get to work and you sit there and, well, what's the matter, man? I I, I just got a call. My parents are getting a divorce. Well, what's the big deal? I mean, they're old, and don't you want them to be happy? Well, what's the big deal? You don't live there anymore. Well,
Yeah.
what's the big deal? And that's the
Mm.
attitude. So there's no support. But the big deal is that before we went to grandpa and grandma's house. Now we go to grandpa or grandma's house.
Wow.
And now grandpa has a girlfriend and
Mm.
grandma's doing, how do you explain that to the kids when you don't understand it yourself?
Oh my God.
And,
Yeah.
and another issue with gray divorce is TMI. I call it TMI, which basically is because you're an adult, they treat you as a friend and not a kid. You're not their kid anymore. They're your friend. And they will tell you, I don't want to know that you've been unsatisfied for 10 years. La 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 la. I don't want to hear this.
TMI. Yeah.
you know, but they will do that and they will share it. And that kind of bleeds into the loyalty challenge that affects not only when the divorce happens when we're kids, but particularly when we're adults. Which one of us do you love the most? And because as an adult, you should know why your dad's a deadbeat or your mom's a whatever. You're old enough to
Mm.
understand why I'm doing this and why you should choose me. And it puts you in this rock and a hard place thing. And the anger just goes off the charts. And another thing that really is a problem with gray divorce is it creates doubt. When you have
Wow.
parents like in your situation, your parents were married for many years, and you kind of go, well, if I'm having problems, mom can put up with this or dad can put up with that. We can make it. But when that marriage collapses after 35, 45, 52 years, this little voice comes in and goes, if they couldn't make it if they couldn't make it after all these years, how do we make it with all our problems? And
Oh,
this
that's a good
doubt
point.
starts to creep in. And from a faith-based standpoint, we believe that there's good and evil, God, and there's also Satan. And you just have these doubts that are fed in and fed in and fed out. You're never going to make it. You're never going to be able to do it. And it just creates this lack of hope that we can do anything. And our ministry, as you mentioned, and even on our website, is hope. That
Yeah.
there is hope. We can change. We don't have to replicate what we've seen. We can learn how to be. I literally had to learn how to be, a dad and a husband and whatever, because there was nothing really programmed in.
Mm.
But the
Oh my
resources are
God.
out there. And instead of just winging it, I encourage people to, as we go into the next thing, just, what are some of the things that can do to help?
Mm. And let me ask you, and that's a very good point because we hear that a lot. I actually knew somebody that actually was going to go through that. Well, my kids are grown now; they're out to college or they're off to college doing their thing. We're going to get a divorce. This has
Right.
not been working for some time. They feel complacent. I mean, it's like it's the perfect time to do it. But I'm
Uh-huh.
glad that you brought that up because it's never a good time. You're still going to have that damage there, even as an adult. So thank you for emphasizing on what the greater divorce is because we see that a lot, especially as a female now in my 40s. I feel like it's so
Mhm.
common like, well, the kids are grown now, everybody's off to
Mhm.
college or all empty nesting. It's time for us to get a divorce, and it's still not a healthy alternative.
It's double digits now. I mean, you see those
Oh,
commercials for the senior singles and all that sort of stuff. It's rampant. And again, I'm not throwing stones at all.
Right.
They genuinely believe that it's not a big deal for the kids, but in many ways, as I've expressed, it's worse. You
Mm.
re-examine your whole childhood. Was it real? Or even worse, they say, well, we only stayed together because of you. And it just, you wonder, was any of it real? And it
Wow.
just, it really, really upsets the apple cart. And you have the issue of before dad and mom took care of dad and mom. Well, now dad's eating burritos and Mountain Dew for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and that's not healthy. So who's going to help him? And now
Mm.
the finances are split at the very time they were at the end of the race. Health issues are on the increase. Who's responsible for that? And we get kind of sucked into the vortex. A lot of times the older parents aren't computer savvy. Everything's on the computer now. So who helps with that? When you want to just go, you know what, you made the decision, I'm out of here. You can't, because you just
Yeah,
kind of get
you can't.
sucked into it. And you need boundaries. And there's just a variety of things that really come into play when gray divorce, kicks in.
And I definitely want to hone in on, living in a time that you mentioned where so many adult children are just navigating their parents' divorce, right? Later in
Hmm.
life, we talked about greater divorce in the 30s and 40s and 50s. You talk about the importance of the questions in your book, your devotional book, Choose a Better Path.
Hmm.
What would you say to that someone as we wrap up,
Hmm.
who feel ashamed or guilty or still affected by something they think they should have already been healed from? What would be your advice for that?
Okay. For the divorced parent, if you're listening, relax. He didn't know. You go, you know what? I'm sorry, I didn't know. We had to make decisions, and we're going to try and make sure we understand better and go from here forward. I'm big on that as a counselor. Unless you're in a Marvel movie, you can't go backwards. So it's
Yeah.
from here forward. If you're listening to this and going, "Whoa,
Mm.
this is me," the first thing we do is you go to resources. Iris mentioned the book. The book out there is Choose a Better Path: Overcoming the
Yeah.
Impact of Your Parents' Divorce, which is basically the only book I'm aware of in this format. It's just a devotional format, couple of pages, and it works you through the various issues that impact adults with divorced parents. The website hopeforadp.com, I like to say it's not the Kent Darcie show. It basically, yeah, there's blogs and podcasts and videos on it that are me, but I have a whole resource section that is the best resources that I can find for helping adults with divorced parents. Like if you're experiencing great divorce, there's a great book called Home Will Never Be the Same Again. It's by Friedenberg and Hughes. It's a really, really great book if your parents have divorced after you were grown. There's a book called The Long Way Home by Gary Newman that really digs deep. My book basically skims the surface and kind of helps you identify how the divorce impacted you. His book takes you deep dive. If you're a lady listening to this program and you're going, oh my goodness, there's a book called Daughters of Divorce by Terry Gaspard, and all these are on the website. But first of all, don't be in denial like I was.
Yeah.
Second of all, access resources and access things. Third of all, tell somebody. You'd be amazed. Half of all your friends, half all the people in your restaurant you go to, on the whatever league you're in, they have divorced parents. So talk with somebody and work through this together. And for those of you of faith, pray. The Bible
Oh.
says that God comforts the brokenhearted. And
Mm.
today, this is the day that he has made. And he says he's the father of the fatherless. There's promise after promise after promise in the Bible that offers us the ability to go to God, cast all our cares on him, the word says, because he cares for us. So don't do this thing alone, but don't be like I was in denial. I don't believe in coincidences. I only believe in God incidences. That you happen to click on the site, you happen to see this podcast, you happen to go, huh? And then you
Yeah.
happen to click on it, don't click out and go, well, that was nice or whatever. Listen to it again, pray through it, get some of the resources, and at best, help yourself. Really, at best, you've got people around you that need to hear the same thing because they are being impacted. We just don't know it.
Oh, and thank you for that, Kent. And again, I want to truly thank you, just not for being here today, but for walking in your purpose and choosing to comfort others with the same comfort God gave you. That's huge. Faith is huge. And thank you for emphasizing on that.
It's a
Mm,
privilege.
yeah, that ripple effect, it's real, it's powerful. And I know that you gave our audience members where they could find you, your website, but let's go ahead and reiterate again. Where can our listeners find you and where can they find you? Like follow your work and your next book and support Hope for ADP.
Sure. The website is hope, the number four, adp.com. Everything is there. And the four basically stands for having healthy relationships with God, self, spouse, and others. Because that encompasses all that we want to have healthy relationships for. And we really struggle with that. So that's really the best place to go. I can be reached through there. I'm on Instagram and Facebook, but mostly it's easier to get me through the website.
Oh, thank you so much. And of course, before we wrap out of here, what's that one quote or scripture or just some type of word of encouragement that you want to leave our listeners with today? You had so many wonderful things to say, but I just feel like somebody needs to hear this because there may be fighting or beginning their healing journey for someone just carrying the effects of parental divorce. What would you say to them? What do you want to lead them with?
That it's not a coincidence you heard this. That, through my, perspective, God Himself, the creator of the universe, wanted you to hear this because He didn't want you to go through any more pain. He didn't want you to go through all the craziness and not have any answers. So He's provided this time and provided this vehicle so that you can have the hope of a future of a healthy relationship, of a healthy marriage or remarriage, of healthy relationships with your parents, because a lot of times that's out of whack, and healthy relationships with people in general. That is the hope that I have been called to give to you.
Oh, that's beautiful and that's powerful. And I know that message is just going to land right there and hone in for a lot of people and take them home. And once again, Kent, I have so much love and appreciation to you. And I want to thank you again for joining and for saying yes to this beautiful conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Until next time, you guys already know. Let's keep the conversation going. Con mucho amor. This has been Conversations with Iris. Thank you.